Hello. This week's Parsha and Vayishlach contains one of the most enigmatic episodes in the entire Torah. It's well known. Yaakov is left alone on the night before he encounters his brother after many years of estrangement. Vayevosa Yaakov levadoi. Yaakov was left alone. Vaye ovek ish imoy ad alos hashochar. And a man, unidentified, struggled or wrestled with him until the dawn rose. Now, the identity of this man has been discussion in Midrashim and later sources throughout Jewish literature. Some cast him as a robber, some cast him as Saro Shel Esov, a kind of alter ego or guardian angel of Esov, his brother. For the Rambam, it's not a real event at all. It's going on in his mind, as he explains near the end of the Moreh Nevuchim. And in that way, you see that Yaakov's fears, as it were, are haunting him. He's the night before a great meeting, and he's replaying in his mind what he imagines is an eternal fight. But of course he fights through the night, whether in his mind or physically, and he eventually wins the battle, although he's injured. But by dawn, he's victorious, and in the words of Rabbi Aaron Soloveitchik, he even succeeded in wringing a blessing and praise from the lips of his aggressor. There's a lot of ink spilt about the purpose and significance of this story. It talks about the dark side of Jewish history, what it means to fight with a mortal enemy through the night of exile, whether the enemy is our brother or whether he is not. And how it is that we've succeeded time and time again. Sometimes we leave the battle injured, but ultimately we're victorious. Sometimes eliciting praise from our enemies, and sometimes they are indeed the children of Esau. Until the next time. At the end of the story, which is actually quite brief, something extraordinary happens, which is the blessing that Yaakov wrings from his oppressor includes a name change. He is renamed Yisrael, and as we've mentioned before, he will now be known as Yaakov, an individual identity, and Yisrael, the corporate identity. What does Yisrael mean? In fact, it says, Ki soriso im Elokim ve'im anoshim vatuchol. For you have struggled, contended perhaps, with God and with man and prevailed. So Elohim actually is translated by some of the Targumim, by the Targum Yonason and Ben Uziel. It's translated as angels. Elohim can sometimes mean angels, which means you contended with angels and with men and prevailed. But I much prefer the translation, perhaps more normative, of the Targum Onkelos, which said it means with God. So we understand, and Rashi explains, contending with man. Yaakov's had a tough life. He's fought with Esau, his brother. He's fought with Lavan, his father-in-law. But what does it mean to fight with God, to strive with God? I think it means to aspire, to be in dialogue with God, to ask, no matter where we are in life, no matter whether we believe, to recognize that there are existential questions, to not be satisfied with injustice, to not submit, but to constantly strive and to aspire to be godly. What is interesting, of course, is that is what makes Israel. The ability not to rest on his laurels, not to rest on our laurels. When we're able to strive not just with other people, to do our best to improve society, but also we're willing to fight with God. Sometimes there appears to be a yawning gulf between what we expect of the world and what God seems to have made it. We can never give up on that battle. We can never concede. We must always fight with other people in a positive and appropriate way. And we must also contend with God. And ultimately, when we're willing to do so, it's clear that God gives over us the ability to succeed in that battle. He expects no less of us than we will contend with him. And that is what makes us Yisrael. Good Shabbos and sei gesund und stark.